What makes a Malbec from the Uco Valley different from a Malbec in Luján is the altitude. To give you an idea, here we are 1,690 meters above sea level. This means that the behavior of Malbec is completely unique. For Malbec, the high altitude makes the skin of the berries thicker, have more color, more tannins, and more aromas. So it makes the wines we get from these areas of stony soils and high altitude have a very high aging potential and with a complexity completely different from what is obtained in Luján.
The grape grows a thicker skin to protect itself from irradiation. It also protects itself from the winds. You have very strong winds, which we have experienced while on our way here. Indeed, the police stopped us because we couldn't cross through the strong winds.
It is one of the challenges we have to face to do this extreme agriculture and viticulture. In reality, these are challenges that many companies can't face. We do. Why? Because the quality we get from these places is super unique. This is our high-end project, and we have an abysmal quality differential.
Well, since we're suffering the sonda wind, I want you to explain it to me briefly, what it is exactly. It's interesting. It's a wine that originates in the Pacific Ocean, at the other side of the Andes.
It is a wind that is part of the essence of San Juan and Mendoza. It's a wind that is born in the Pacific Ocean, like you said. It's born as a wet and cold wind, but as it climbs the Andes Mountains, it loses that moisture in the form of precipitation and fog. And when it crosses the mountain range, it begins to lower in altitude, and it begins to heat up. Then this wind gets to us as a hot and dry wind, which at certain moments of the plant cycle can do a lot of damage.
Well, Pablo, we have here a small vertical section of your land, under one of the vineyards that you have recently planted with Pinot Noir.
Pinot Noir.
Here you can see very well what is most characteristic of the soils here in the Uco Valley. Tell me about it.
Well, this is a floor highly sought after in Argentine viticulture. It's calcareous soil. It makes the behavior of the vineyard very different than others. This soil can be found in the Uco Valley, in some areas like Gualtallary, San Pablo, Altamira, and Los Arboles, which is where we are now. Here we can see how the soil behaves and how it is formed. We have a first layer, about 30 to 35 centimeters of fertile soil. But after that we find stone with calcium carbonate incrustations. This is the typical chalky soil. It's different from other areas that have limestone. This is calcareous sedimentary. In other words, it has been deposited.
This makes grass. The roots are freed between these stones.
Of course, you can see how the root penetrates, and roots appear as far as down here. Look at the roots. You can see them everywhere.
This is a very important soil. You say that winemakers look for this soil for a reason. What does it do to the grape?
Well, this affects the balance of the plant. Each plant has a different balance. This soil regulates the production of the plant and makes it more mineral. Look at my hand. This chalk that I have is later experienced in forms of texture in the wine on the palate. It also gives a very valuable natural acidity in wines. That acidity helps us reveal part of the aromatic components we look for in these wines. It gives freshness and elegance to the wine. That is why these floors are so sought after and so appreciated. There aren't that many, they are very few. Viticulture in Argentina depends on water. If we do not have water, we cannot carry out agriculture. To give you an idea, a vineyard dies in 3 months without irrigation. This is a water spring. The water comes from up there, 10 meters up. We take it from this place, and from here we move it to a larger reservoir, and from there, due to unevenness, without the use of energy, we water our vineyards for our new projects.
You use drip irrigation to keep everything under control, right?
Of course, we work with a team of engineers. We work doing all the calculations in order to determine this water flow. We know how much there is, how much surface area it allows us to cultivate, and obviously, we use drip irrigation with the latest technology available.
Well, we are in the Uco Valley. You guys are located at the foot of the Andes. In other words, this area is already climbing the Andes. In fact, we have been going up quite a bit to get here. To get to this project, we have gone along a road that cuts through the mountain. I'm assuming it's as hard to get here as it is to work the vineyards. How do you do it?
Well, this is a challenge. They really are unique projects. They are projects that only very few wineries can do. The challenge is, as I said, finding water, finding a water spring like this. The challenge is making that road that led us up here, which was months of work, of effort, to be able to get water from here. Obviously, we think these projects through, always with a vision of sustainability. Seeing what we can do so that nature is integrated into the vineyard. You see that we try to alter nature or native vegetation the least amount possible. Why? Because our essence is that the vineyard integrates into the landscape, the type of soil, the climate, and obviously, using water in the most efficient way possible.
Well, you've shown us where the water comes from. Here we can see the pipes for drip irrigation. We are in a vineyard that you just planted. Indeed, you can see here the tiny plants.
Exactly. Here you see the vines we just planted. What we do is agriculture with as little intervention as possible. You can see that the native plants still continue to grow. We only dig a hole, put the plant in, and use drip irrigation with the water coming from the water spring. This winery, Mosquita Muerta, has white and red varieties. Within the reds, obviously, we have the varieties that are predominant or more important in Argentine viticulture, like Malbec, but we also have Cabernet Franc, which we see as the variety to accompany Malbec. It is the grape with second most potential in Argentina. Then in the white varieties, we have Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay. Then we also have Pinot Noir.
These are all French grapes.
Yes.
And what are they doing here in Argentina? Why do they do so well? They are all varieties from Bordeaux.
Exactly.
The climate is very different.
Well, that's the great difference. They are varieties that have found a niche and have behaved differently from how they behave in France. Malbec in French means mal la boca, bad mouth. In reality, it's a wine in France that does not generate much concentration. It is a high production wine.
In fact, it's only used in Cahors, and that's basically it.
Exactly. Although here the behavior is totally different. It is a variety that concentrates, that generates very nice tannins, very round, lots of fruit, and wines with very high aging potential. Nothing to do with how it behaves there, which is in humid climates and at sea level.
We are in a winery that has a peculiar history, which is also closely associated to the decision of the owner of the winery to start making wine. He is a supermarket and food merchant.
Exactly.
He decided to make wine because he bought this winery as a distribution center, but they didn't let him use it because it has an architecture that is very typical to this area.
Yes, it has a very typical architecture and it has become the property of the province. And well, what was done was to value fairly all the virtues that this century-old winery has. In that, also taking advantage to elaborate wine, the whole winery was refunctioned. So, Each and every one of the pools were worked on. We made it practically new. We are using 100% of everything here.
You have this, you have concrete eggs, and many other things.
It all depends on the variety we use or type of winemaking practices we do. In the case of white wines, we have presses. We have the possibility to do selections of cluster and grain, and the possibility of fermenting in these concrete tanks or in stainless steel tanks.
How do you make Chardonnay, for example?
For Chardonnay, it is a very careful preparation because what we are looking for is to maintain all that freshness of the vineyard. Well, we have been growing vines at 1500 meters altitude and 1600 meters altitude. We need to maintain all that freshness. What is done is a very careful harvest. The grapes enter the winery. We press using pneumatic presses. We collect the juice and put it in either a tank or pool to clarify. After that, we begin with fermentation. The fermentation can be done in an oak barrel or in a stainless steel tank. It all depends on the type of style we want for each Chardonnay.
And what about the reds, like Malbec, Cabernet Sauvignon, or Cabernet Franc? How do you treat them?
Well, for Malbec, which is a very plastic variety, in the sense that it is very easy to work, it responds very well to the way it is worked. What I mean by this is that if I vinify it in a concrete tank, or in a short vinification, we will obtain a super silky product, super fruity, with very little tannins, but very soft. I can also do a much larger extraction. We have the possibility of working on it in concrete eggs, and there we will manage to have a different structure. We can also do a fermentation directly in a barrel, in a ferment roll. There, we are going to have a lot of concentration, a lot of color, but with a very special silkiness.
Well, let's go to the ages section of the winery and you can explain how it works.
Perfect, let's go.
We're not in the barrel room, which is where we were going to go, but you showed me this room where you also age wine. It's so beautiful and I love it, so we're going to do the rest of the interview here. Tell me about the aging process.
Well, in the case of aging, it depends a lot on the strain. So, we have a strain in which aging is done in barrel. We also have a strain that we cut directly before placing it in the barrel. In the case of products such as Cordero con Piel de Lobo, what we would do is look for a very important fruity intensity. So for that wine, the contact in oak would be at a minimum. That wine would predominantly be in concrete pools.
Like this one?
Yes, exactly, in these.
So these are in use?
Yes, these are all working right now. In the case of Perro Calogero, what we do is maintain 50% of the cut inside these cellars. The rest of the cut we put in barrels of second and third use. We do this so it ages in oak and has more of an oak touch in the wine.
Is there a wine which you focus more on oak with?
In general, you'll find more oak usage on the higher tier lines for Mosquita Muerta. In the Malcriado, we use more oak. In general, we do not want oak to be the main protagonist. We seek to make it the identity of the terroir that stands out. So if we do use an oak barrel, it would be a barrel of second or third use, or we'd work with higher volumes so that the contact with oak is less.
For the wines that go in barrel, how long are they in there for?
It ranges anywhere from 6 to 18 months, but it depends a lot on the intensity each wine has. In other words, there are wines that, even after 18 months, are always predominant with fruit, and there are others that are totally different.